Welcome to the Business Leaders Legacy Podcast, the show where we go behind the scenes of business leaders to uncover their vision, strategies, and challenges they face along the way. My name is Chris Bruner. I'm the CEO of Simple AI Solutions and the host of today's podcast. I'm excited to introduce Scott Jolly, owner of Site Construction Specialists. Scott's firm currently manages approximately 175 large capital expenditure projects annually, oversees about $20 million projects like paving, roofing, and infrastructure for commercial property owners across the country. Scott, thank you for being here. Can you please introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little about you, your business, and the clients you serve?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Scott Jolly, site consulting specialist. I started this company about 10 years ago, and I've been called a serial entrepreneur in the past. Most of my businesses are in the construction space. So, this particular business was actually birthed out of a need from some of my clients I had in Southern California that started asking me to travel around the country to help them with some larger construction projects. I live in Reno, Nevada, just outside of Lake Tahoe currently, and I primarily work with large publicly traded or privately funded real estate investment trusts or half billion to billion, or most of our clients are usually a $500 million in assets owned and greater. And I think our largest one has up to $100 billion in total assets around the country. So, and really focus on commercial, industrial, retail, shopping centers, apartment complexes, things of that nature, where we focus on old and ugly, where you've owned a building for 20 or 30 years and you're due for some larger capital expenditures that you're probably only going to have to do every 10 or 20 years, like roofing, paving, siding, decking, things like that. And you want to kind of make sure you're going to do it right. And so we come alongside owners and help them navigate that process.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, I wanted to jump in. What do you enjoy most about running your business?
I enjoy the freedom. Sometimes as an entrepreneur and business owner, it can not have freedom in that, it's you and you're running the company. And there's definitely lots of that, I think, in the early stages where you can be kind of restricted by just having to pay the bills and do whatever's necessary to get things done. But having been doing this for a while now, there can be and there is a sense of freedom in that, like, I kind of, I eat what I hunt, I'm dependent on myself and my team to do what's necessary, which to me is like very freeing. I get to dictate my future, so that's good and bad. Like how much I make and what I do is really dependent on my abilities and how well I'm able to bring others along in that process as well. So it challenges me to be better, to learn, to grow, to look at good and bad things, and then you learn from the bad things more than the good things. So take those losses and failures and adapt and grow so that you can be better and get to those levels, I would say, either in life or in the game, and try to improve. That's really what I enjoy the most. I love working with people. That's probably my single, whether it's a client or an employee or a business partner or something like that, being able to like dive in and work one on one or in smaller groups is really like probably my favorite part of about the business.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really neat. Off camera, you mentioned getting kicked during the 0809 recession. What is some critical lessons you learned during that time that helped shape your business approach today?
Yeah, I would say I learned two things. Well, the first thing is I learned a better sense of microeconomics, macroeconomics, and political influence. I do pay attention to those things a little bit more now than I used to kind of understand, because I think it's obviously you can't predict every little thing that's going to happen and how things are going, but if you pay attention, you can kind of have an understanding of what might or might not happen and where the economy or the political climate is going to go that may have a direct influence on your business. And so I try to stay left or right or any of that. Just they're all doing their thing, and that's going to affect my business in some way. And so, how can I understand what's going on so that I can make changes or plan in my business? Like with interest rates, where are these government bonds and things like that coming from? How is the government spending money, and how can I position myself the best way? Highs, lows in stock markets and real estate, things like that. Knowing where we're at in that market helps me plan better. And I would say the second thing I learned was, having a long-term plan is always important. And I would say long-term is usually beyond 10 years. Because I did get kicked and had to lose some properties that I'd bought and some businesses in the 08, 09 because I didn't have the wherewithal. I was pretty young, 27, 26. I just kind of started my business when everything had happened. And so, but looking back, I think that I could have done more to stay in it, and the my net worth would probably be significantly higher if I had held on to some of those properties or done what I could have done to reposition those properties and businesses. And knowing that, looking back, that downturn was really probably like 3 years, 4 years. If I had had that knowledge and mindset, and looking back through history, that's kind of typical. Like if you can get through that 3 or 4 year mark in a downturn and have that 10-year plan, then you have a really great opportunity to like double or triple in value over that period of time.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. That's definitely some wise lessons learned at the time. So yeah, thank you for sharing. That's cool.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little more about your successful business model, of specifically the SoCal Paving Partner,
Mhm.
and why you chose them to launch that new division?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, I was looking to start a local paving company just to like provide a little bit of backstory on this. Kind of always been on my heart because my consulting company requires me to travel a lot. And so as I was looking for a partner, this one company that I've worked with for a lot really stood out. Because of their model. And their model really is, I would say, I put in my notes like, don't be greedy as a business owner. And here's a gentleman. When I first met him, he was wearing cargo shorts, a t-shirt, Teva sandals, and runs a company and started a company now that does about 85 million in revenue. And the reason they've been successful is because they only keep 20% of the profit. Obviously, they've built in costs for equipment, crew members, office staff. But for an $85 million company, they have less than 10 people in the office, which is really profound. And the way they've been able to do that is by empowering the project managers. And so the project managers are able to, which in construction, I think project manager is almost synonymous with sales rep. Like that's your sales team, and especially in paving, construction, concrete, a lot of like project manager, sales rep are almost the same. And so the project managers get 66% of the profit by selling the job. But we don't have superintendents, we don't have schedulers in the office. It's all on the project manager to do all that, to bid out materials, to get quotes on materials. It's really the project manager that is responsible for everything. We have to upload our own job costing, schedule the crews. So we have a crew board and equipment board that comes out every month for like 3 months ahead of time because that's how far ahead we are. And so you have to schedule your own crews, equipment, materials being delivered to the site. If you have subcontractors, you've got to negotiate with them, schedule and everything. And you also take on legal and financial responsibility for your job. So if something does go sideways, you're responsible, 80% responsible. And so the company will help you, but if you have a loser, it goes negative on your account. If you have, obviously the winners, you get 66%. And the other thing I would say that makes them really successful is we give 14% of that profit to the foreman. And so the foreman, that's really what probably, obviously the financial opportunity with, I'll make money just by selling work, but then I can also make money as being an owner now as well. But the foreman, we have third generation crew members now.
Mm.
Some of the original foremen were the grandfather of some of the kids now that are coming onto the crews. And that's just almost unheard of in a construction company. You really just don't see that anywhere these days. And so to find a company that has that and try to replicate that in some areas, the primary owners worked on the crews and worked with the crews and will still show up on job sites, 20 to 30 years into the beginning part of the company. They were still doing it. They're in their 70s now. And the other thing is they have no debt. They've never had debt. They never took on debt. They saved their money. They were good with their money. The primary owner, John, has I think 5 or 6 or more like different yards for the company now and just saves his money until he can pay cash for it. That way, in down times, they're not burdened with debt
Yeah.
and putting the company at risk. And so those are the primary things. And then I would say the last thing is over time, they've essentially sold their shares to the project managers and maybe some of the foremen. And so we're almost like we didn't like transfer into an ESOP where people could like buy, it just kind of naturally came about, whereas the owners wanted to like kind of relinquish some responsibility, cash in on some of their ownership shares. They've been able to sell those off and they want to sell them to people that are involved in the company. And they actually pay like I think last year they paid a 16% return on shares. And so it's also a way that you're investing. Everyone now is like invested in the success of the whole business, not just what am I
Yeah.
selling, what am I doing?
Yeah, no, that's super cool. When businesses share the success of the business with everyone, it makes everyone feel so more empowered and motivated. And so that's really cool to hear. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I wanted
I-
to shift a little bit into trends within the industry.
yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes you're seeing in the industry right now? With
Yeah.
paving, roofing,
Yeah.
infrastructure.
So I would actually say, and this is just in the last like 5 years, I've seen a major shift in the introduction of venture capital into these larger construction companies. Just in the last 5 years, I've probably seen like three like pretty large Southern California companies were bought by venture capitalist firms. These are 50 to $100 million a year annual revenue companies that were bought. I've actually been on some other podcasts from guys that own a group out of Salt Lake City. Rose Paving, one of the largest nationally, just merged with a company called Atlantic Southern. We're seeing a ton of consolidation in paving, roofing, siding, decking, painting, these larger commercial vendors that operate and are really going out and gobbling up all these small to medium range companies. And that probably has been the single biggest thing that we've seen in the industry in the last 5 to 10 years. And doesn't seem like it's going away. Like they're buying more and more and it's consolidating the industry. And what I've seen in that is actually prices go up as these venture capitalist firms come in. They corporatize everything. You lose that like mom and pop. You lose that small business. You lose some of that. And I've seen a lot of the top people leave within the first 2 or 3 years because of some of that. So I haven't seen it be done super successfully. And I've seen it push their pricing up as now they've got a huge back office and they've got these margins they've got to hit for their investors, and things like that. So there has been a little bit in like bidding and takeoff software. I think it's getting better. We're seeing more AI developed for like takeoffs of properties so you can measure. I've seen it. My buddy owns a solar company and the software they have to be able to determine, like, just look at your roof from Google Earth and put a plan together and maybe like help you bid it based on kilowatt hours and facing of the sun and things like that. It's like pretty phenomenal. Uh,
Yeah.
Finding one specific to our industry, there's really good ones for roofing. There's really good ones for solar that I've seen. Haven't seen a really great one for paving and concrete yet, but I think they're getting close.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That definitely leads into the next question about, the tools or strategies within the industry, if there is any other types of new technology that helps with, either automating or the project management side or estimating, lead generation, anything like that are you seeing within the industry?
Yeah, I would say, as you mentioned, in continuing on with that, like I think lead generation is we are definitely seeing like so with my consulting company, almost 100% of my new clients are either referral or through social media. I've done a really great job over the last probably 7 years with targeting specific clients on LinkedIn and developing those strategies. Some, with my particular clients, it's not necessarily great for advertising and things of that nature. It's a high ticket item, and so it's a high dollar item, and so trying to find where those people are hanging out. Uh, you know, Conferences I think are starting to see like dwindling returns on people attending conferences and things of that nature, especially like industry related, like with commercial real estate, what I've seen with commercial real estate, HOAs, apartments. There's some new ones that are popping up that I think are doing things a little bit differently, but your kind of old school traditional conference that's been running for 30 or 40 years, like I'm seeing attendances drop on those. And we're seeing things like what you're doing, right? Podcasts and how do we, I liken it to the Gary V mentality of sales of like give, 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 right? The go giver mentality of educating people and really proving that you're able to help a specific need that they have. Software has been a big thing, as I mentioned, and there's a ton of project management. Our company, City Service Paving, actually developed our own job cost. It's a sales and job costing tool, and so you can put your projects in there. It acts like a CRM, so you can follow up with clients, and then on the back end, when you land a job, it spits out contracts, spits out lien releases, spits out warranty paperwork. You can upload your receipts and subcontractor bills and things like that directly to the website. And so I think with AI, customizing your own software is gonna be like super doable. Where like even just in the last few years, we looked at doing it for our consulting company. It was like $100,000 to $200,000 to build out like a customizable tool. Where I think that, now for 20, 30, $50,000, depending on what your needs are, and maybe even as the years go by, it could be even become cheaper to build out like a fully customizable tool for your business is going to be, I think, possible and efficient and cost efficient.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah, there definitely is. It's definitely interesting to see kind of how AI is affecting, so many different industries, especially this. Yeah, I think you're right. We will definitely see a lot of changes with being able to do more for a lot less using AI. But yeah, I wanted to jump into kind of where you currently are within your business. So what is currently working really well across your companies? What makes you the most proud of your team,
Yeah.
of it, doing all those projects?
Yeah. So last year my business partner and I split ways, which I think for any business it's not if, but when, one person or both people decide, hey, this isn't for me anymore. Not that sometimes it's a personal thing, sometimes it's a professional thing. He's 10 years older than me. And so he was just at a point in his life where he was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. It's not what I want to do. So no hard feelings. His son actually still works for the company, and I say all that to say like I'm super proud of my team to be able to lose a core business partner and be able to maintain our clients. Not lose half our business or it's a two partner company, and so in some situations that could really have a really dramatic effect on total revenue, team continuity, things of that nature. And so really proud of them to kind of pull together, work out a plan. It wasn't just me directing like a general, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Definitely like leading the charge in that, but gaining feedback from them and them giving me feedback. I'm like, yeah, I'm up for this. I can help in this way. I can do this, things of that nature. So really kind of proud of them for coming together. We even, later in the year lost a gal to maternity leave. And so being able to, bring a new person on last spring, knowing that she was going to be gone. We brought on a virtual assistant who's been really great and has really kind of integrated themselves into our day-to-day team. But really proud of us to get through this transition year because it was really kind of end of last year that my partner and I decided to split ways, I guess. Like he essentially decided we kept the company and he decided to leave. Just proud for them of being able to maintain the current business through this process. And really success in that, I think to answer the second part of that question, was um, being honest early and vocal and gaining feedback from the team and really considering that feedback is what made that successful. Being very clear, like, hey, this is what's happening. I don't know, being honest about, hey, I don't exactly know what this is going to look like. I don't know how long it's going to take, the transition. I don't, I don't know exactly what the future holds, but bringing them into that process and getting buy-in really was what I think allowed me to be vulnerable, me be vulnerable about, hey, I don't have all the answers. All I know is that I'm committed to this thing and I'm committed to seeing it through and getting through this. I know we'll have maybe some loss of clients or some loss of business in this process, and we've been able to maintain pretty good with probably like maybe less than 10% loss in gross revenue during a transition year where you lose 50% of the partnership. I think is actually really good,
Yeah.
and be able to still be profitable with that as well is really good. So that's what I'm most proud about these guys and the team that we've built.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's definitely something to be really proud of. It it leads into my next question when talking a little bit about challenges
Uh,
and it's tied right with losing someone and being able to see all of that success, with barely losing any business. And it definitely speaks to how you've been able to pivot and overcome those challenges. So that's really cool. But what's something maybe like a big headache or bottleneck or something that maybe is currently taking up a lot of time right
mm.
now?
It's a great question. And I had to really think about this one. I think that the bottleneck is still me, in full honesty, and training and being with my people in a way where they are confident to fail. And I say that, and I'll explain it a little bit, where I want them to be confident. I want them to make decisions and not worry too much about failing. Because the bottleneck in my business
Mhm.
can be then, hey, I'm going to send this email to this client. Does this sound right? And or hey, like this morning, like I got a project man on a job site, and he's calling and texting me, and it's like, hey, is this the area? Is that the area that we're gonna remove and replace today? Even though he's been to the site a couple times, right? But he's only been with me for a couple of years, and so he's still just like in that early learning stage and new to the business. So I brought him, from a completely different industry into this industry. So he's only 2 years in, which I think in construction is still like relatively new. But training and being with them in a way to be confident enough to go for it, to not know that I'm okay if they make mistakes. And so that is my biggest struggle is me having the time and dedicating the time and energy to training my team. I do one-on-one meetings with them, each of them weekly, to try and grow that confidence and go through situations. And I try to keep them to like a half an hour with each one. But to go through these different scenarios so they don't feel like they have to email me or call me. I have a small team of 6 people, and so and none of them came from inside the industry except for one, and that was my old business partner's son, and he's still young. He's been around construction his entire life. But he's only 21, 22 years old, so he's still learning, he's still growing, and I want to get them to the point where they one understand that I'm okay if they make mistakes and they fail, and not to have to depend on me for every little answer, every little thing. So that is my biggest struggle in my business currently, and with the paving company starting up, we're building crews. I think people are still the biggest struggle in any service-based business is bringing people on, having them know their role, having them become proficient in their role, and then empowering them to go out and do what they're supposed to do and not worry about making mistakes. Hey, everyone's going to make mistakes. I make them all the time. No one's asking for perfection here. Proficiency and excellence are the goals. And so if I can empower them to do that, just knowing that mistakes are going to happen, it's how we handle those mistakes in the process is really what's going to determine the success of the business. because
Yeah.
no business has done everything perfect.
Yeah, no, that's really neat. That's really cool to hear how you invest so much into your team and really help them so much along the way. And so that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about where your company is going. And so looking ahead, maybe like 6 months to a year, what goals are you focused on achieving within the business?
Yeah, my goal. So again, to the consulting business, my goal is to maintain. Uh, we have chosen like essentially 4 or 5 of our regional or national clients that we really like, that we have seen almost their entire portfolio. It's going to be easier for us to manage. There's a one or two kind of like startup guys that I just really like, and I get a sense that they're gonna be successful because I understand, like I've met with them, I've talked to them, I understand their business model, I understand their goals, and I just it's called a gut feeling. I just have a feeling they're going to be successful, and I kind of want to ride it out with them. Like being an entrepreneur myself and seeing this, some of our other guys, clients, men and women are, uh, like I said, they're publicly traded companies, they're REITs, they're pretty big companies, and so again, I know their portfolio fairly. I understand their systems and their processes, and we've integrated well with them, and so easy to kind of integrate with them. But there's a couple of these one-offs that kind of tug on my entrepreneurial heart, and I want to see them be successful, and so I'm going to keep them as well. But the goal there is to maintain SCS, my consulting business, not really looking to grow. There's, like I said, a couple clients that if they fit the right model, I'll be happy to add them, but really just maintain it, keep it going. And then most of my big goals, which I'm kind of, I like to think of myself as a big thinker. Um, with the paving company, I'd like to get to $5 million in revenue this year. Would be our second year in business, and so we're over about 1.5 in our first year, starting from nothing. So I think that's great in my opinion. $5 million gets us like a 5 to 6 man crew, fully employed for the whole year. We can cross train on different areas of the business, buy a yard for this division here in Northern Nevada this year, and then implement. We're going to start snow plowing, which is like almost like a separate division inside of a division. But it's a big business here where I live in near Lake Tahoe and in Northern Nevada. So getting all the equipment together, so that we can implement that, into. So that's like in the next 12 months. So in the 6 months, I've got to sell probably like $3 to $4 million worth of work in the next 6 months, because the way our seasons work, like a lot of people are going to be writing contracts beginning of the year, Q1, Q2. You're going to probably close like 60 to 70% of your business, because of where I live. Like if you're in Southern California, San Diego, like it's year round, right? It's a very different market. But here where we're at, we really got to be up there, and then probably close 50 to 100 snowplow contracts by the end of September, October, because a lot of the bigger companies like to have those in place because they kind of start in October, around here with some snow plowing operations. So if I could get 100, that's my real goal, is get 100 different properties under contract to do snow plowing for going in next year.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That kind of leads into my next question about growth. I thinking about the paving and the new slow snow plowing company. It's cool. Just more and more ideas are coming to you, and you're just going with it. So that's exciting. But how do you plan on achieving that growth? Getting those new slow snow plowing contracts and really tackling over this next year or so.
Yeah, I think our sales and marketing has kind of been easy for me, in all honesty. My what's been holding, what holds me back is the ability to perform at this point. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of business owners have, is like, can I get the work, do it well, and not have to do every single thing, right? That scaling process, which I would say shout out to an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. Once you get over that $1 million mark and you're really, starting to scale, even some locations have like an accelerator program that teaches you like the different ways different pillars of business to focus on and how to scale up. But I'm in that stage now where people again. I need crew members. I need people. If I feel confident that I'll be able to perform the work and perform it to the standard that I have, I can sell the work. Like I was in Southern California for 6 or 7 years, and helped grow a company from 4 million to 15 million in that time frame. So I know I can sell the work and do the work, but I need people and crew members to come alongside me. And then, so it's that rub. Like I need to get to a certain dollar amount to confidently bring guys on like, hey, I can employ you full time. Obviously, full time here is different than in other areas, but that's why I want to do snow plowing is to give guys some work during the winter time because we're going to shut down here in the next probably 3 to 4 weeks as temperatures drop below 40 or 50 degrees, even 40 degrees. And so paving kind of goes out the window. Even a lot of concrete work goes out the window. We can still do grading, trenching, things like that. But that's where my struggle is. I believe I can sell the work. I think that any business owner is having faith and confidence that you can sell the work and perform it as to the high standard and not dropping those standards at any part in the process. If we hold a high standard, that will naturally kind of grow the business.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. That's really neat. That's cool to hear just the plan and where you're heading and how you're going to tackle it. So that's super cool. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today. The insight you brought was definitely very, very cool, very insightful. I think a lot of our listeners will have a great time just hearing more and diving into this with us. But can you share a little bit more about where our listeners can find out more about your businesses?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn, Scott G. Jolly. If you go like LinkedIn at the very end, you have like your like account name. It's Scott G. Jolly. Site consulting specialist is on there as well. I don't even think we have a page. Like a paving company has kind of always been natural growth from what I understand, even though it's been around for 50 years. So there's no LinkedIn site, there's no social media. Some of the project managers have websites, but for finding me, LinkedIn is probably the single best way to do that. Um, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, to close, I'd like to ask one last question. Since this is the Business Leaders Legacy podcast, and you being a business leader, multi-entrepreneurial vision, how, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
It's a great question. I think about legacy a lot. Not to go like too deep into my past, but parents were divorced. I didn't have a lot of legacy coming into this world, and so I want to leave this legacy both for my kids, but I also had a little bit of a troubled past that ended up in jail and didn't start out on the greatest of feet, and so it's actually part of like my growth model with hiring crew members and things like that is I want to leave a legacy of providing opportunities to folks, not just my family, but to those in the world that maybe the world has forgotten about. And to me, that looks at, veterans and people that have been incarcerated. And so those are the first people that I look to hire in my business. I'm also, looking at the younger generation, those 18 to 22-year-olds. That's kind of when I was at my most tumultuous point in life. And so being able to find those younger people that want to work hard. They're out there. I believe they are. I believe in this next generation. I believe they're out there. We just got to find them, empower them. And I think that it will grow. Like if you can find one or two and their friends can see like, hey, I'm making money. I love what I do. I'm working outside every day, right? Like maybe we find a few more and can start something where younger generation wants to get involved in building and things like that. And that what I think would be the greatest legacy besides ending that whole process, introducing people to Jesus and helping them, find their way in life through that process.
Yeah, that's so cool. That is really cool. Well, it sounds like you are definitely on doing it. You're making that legacy happen. So that's awesome. Super cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate the insight you brought. For all of our listeners out there, this is the Business Leaders Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Scott.
Yeah. Thank you.